Have you ever had a curry that's so good, perhaps from your favourite restaurant or takeaway, and as you're eating it, you're thinking to yourself, what's in this curry? Why does it taste so good? What makes this taste like it does? I'm sure if you're a curry fanatic like me, you've had that experience many times. For me, one of the best curries, if not the best curry I've ever had, was from a restaurant that sadly no longer exists. It was called The Punjab, and it was on Winslow Road in Manchester. And it was an Indian restaurant. In other words, it wasn't a Bangladeshi or Pakistani. And they used to do a Madras that was so good that I used to spend ages trying to dissect it, wondering what was in it. And I've spent years trying to recreate that curry. Well, recently I cracked it. And I know I cracked it not only because it tasted to me very close, if not the same, as the curry that they used to make there at the Punjab, but my wife said, "You've cracked it." And then I know I've cracked it. Well, I'm going to share that recipe with you, but not today. You need to learn something else first before we make that recipe. And that's what this video is all about. It's going to be a long one. So grab yourself a drink and buckle up. Hi, I'm back and I got an amazing recipe for you today, the Indian base gravy. Now, the Indian base is, well, it's based a little bit on, not exactly, I've modified it, on a base gravy recipe that I have in my book, The Secret to That Takeaway Curry Taste. If you've not seen this book, it came out in 2014, became a #1 bestseller on Amazon for 2 weeks, which was quite an achievement really for a curry cookbook. But in there is a section all about base gravies, and predominantly the base gravies that most people know and cook to make their BIR style curries are Bangladeshi, Bengali style base gravies. And I relate a little story in this book about a guy that used to be a trader on the market. I used to have a curry business, a takeaway, and it was part of the indoor market at Chorley. And just opposite me was a guy that used to sell hats, gloves, and things like that. He was an Indian guy, and he'd been a chef in an Indian restaurant in a previous life, a previous job that he'd done for many, many years. And one day I was making this base gravy, big pot on the stove, 20 litre, and he was watching me through the window. There was a window in the indoor market right into our unit, and he opened the door and he says, "What are you making?" And I said, a base gravy. And he says, "What are you putting in it?" And I told him all the ingredients that went in it. And as soon as I mentioned the word cabbage, he smiled and said, "That's not an Indian base gravy, that's a Bangladeshi or a Bengali." And he said the Bengalis are great chefs. He said they're known in the South Asian sort of cooking scene really as being great chefs. He says, but it's not an Indian base. He said in an Indian restaurant, a real Indian restaurant, we would use something different. And he went on to relate to me what went into an Indian base gravy. And it didn't include peppers, it didn't include cabbage or carrots or tinned tomatoes or tomato puree, none of that. It was quite different, and I mention it in this book. But over the years I've modified it. I've been to a number of real Indian restaurants, and there are a number of through the UK. Not many these days, most are Bangladeshi, there are some that are Pakistani. But one of my favourites, unfortunately it's no longer there, was called the Punjab, and it was on Winslow Road in Manchester. And that was a real Indian restaurant run by a Sikh family. And their base gravy used to produce, honestly, the best Madras curry I've ever tasted. So I'm going to share with you this base, and then in the next series of videos we're just going to do a whole load of recipes based on this base. You're going to want to make it, because believe me, once you've made this and tasted this and the curries that you get from it, you'll see that it really is superior in a lot of ways. So let's get straight to it. So this base gravy is going to be enough to make you between 8 and 10 curries. We're not making a huge amount. I generally don't make huge amounts. I generally make this amount, and then I'll use what I want for that weekend or that day, and then I will freeze the rest that I don't use. So what have we got? What ingredients go into our Indian based gravy? Well, the first and most important I'm going to mention are red onions. Don't use white onions, don't use Dutch onions. You need to use red for this recipe. Believe me, you'll get a different result and you'll see why. These are finely chopped, and we've got 1 kilo of red onions. We've got 750 grams of red tomatoes, as ripe as we can get them. Generally, in the UK, it's difficult to get ripe, sweet red tomatoes at this time of year. But if I go to the Asia Continental or one of the Asian shops, I'll look for the bagged up variety that are usually just going a little bit out of date, a bit soft, a bit squidgy. Usually they're great for this. We've got 750 grams of chopped tomato. We've got here 75 grams of fresh garlic there. So it's about a bulb and a half of garlic. And we've got half that amount, well, about 40 grams of chopped fresh ginger. Our whole spices, we've got 2 Asian bay leaves. We've got 2 sticks of cinnamon. We've got 8 green cardamom, which we've just split the husk a little bit to release the seeds. And we've got 2 black cardamom. We've got a scant teaspoon of black peppercorns. We've got 8 cloves. We've got a star anise. That will season our oil for our base. We've got 2 green chilies, just broken in half with the stems removed. This is just to add a little bit of spice, bit of heat. But if you're using this base for non-spicy curries, you can remove those. And then we've got our oil. It's just regular vegetable oil. I tend to buy it in bulk, just sunflower oil, usually from the Asian suppliers. We've got 400 milliliters here. We're gonna cook this in 2 stages, but more about that in a moment. We've got 2 tablespoons of butter ghee. We've got some water that we're going to use to just mix our powdered spices with before we add them to the hot oil, and then just dilute our base a little bit. And then for our powdered spices, what we've got here is we've got a tablespoon of cumin, a tablespoon of turmeric, a tablespoon of freshly ground coriander, and I might add that the cumin is freshly ground too. We grind these 2 spices to get a better result. And then we've got a tablespoon of Kashmiri red chili powder. We've got some garam masala. We'll add just a teaspoon of freshly ground garam masala I ground on my own. We've got a tablespoonful of brown sugar. I'm knocking it all over the place, but that's going to sweeten our curry up a little bit, or our base rather, because these tomatoes are not the ripest. And then we've got a tablespoon of salt. Got 1 cup of cashew nuts soaking in some water. They've been soaking in there for about 2 hours. We'll drain off some of that water and then add that in later on. And those are our ingredients for our base. So let's talk about the 2 stages. So these are the stages in cooking this base. First of all, what we're going to do is just going to heat up our big karahi dish here. Just get that nice and hot. So we're heating that up. We're going to put half of our oil, 200 milliliters, into the pot. Let's just have a look. Just a little bit more. And we're going to get that nice and hot, and we're going to temper our whole spices in this hot oil. So our oil's heating up nicely. Feels about hot enough to me. I'll just try it with one of the cloves. Yeah, it's just about getting right. So we'll just put our whole spices in. Now with these whole spices, we're going to want to count some of them in, some of them out. Don't worry about the cardamom, the green cardamom that is, or the black peppercorns, or the cloves. They'll just disappear and blend up into the gravy. But we'll remove the stick cinnamon, we'll remove our Asian bay leaves, we'll remove the star anise, which is in there, one of those, and the two black cardamom. Those black cardamom are lovely. They add a really nice smoky flavour, a real sort of typical of North Indian cuisine, that is. So we'll just allow them just to cook for a little longer. You can tell when you've started to fry these long enough. Once you start to see, you'll see some of the some of the colours from the spices leach into the oil. The oil changes colour just very slightly. Yeah, I think that's good there. So we're going to add in our garlic. You should just start to see that the garlic is turning brown, so we'll now add in our ginger. That's looking right. Now we'll add in the red onions. Just make sure all these onions are coated with the oil. Salt. And this, as I say, will help your onions soften as well. So now we're going to take this to a low heat and we're going to add our lid on. And we'll let it cook for about 10 minutes, but we'll just stir it occasionally just to make sure nothing's sticking in the pan. But you want to have the heat on fairly low. Now to the end of the first stage. So it's just been over 10 minutes. I just checked, they were almost done. So now it's about 11, 12 minutes. We'll take the lid off our pan. And what we want to do, as you can see there, the onions are just coming nice and soft. But what we're going to do before we add in the tomatoes, the next stage is we want to fish out those ingredients we mentioned. So we want to get rid of the bay leaves. We can use them again. I often use them more than once, at least twice. Let's just get the onions off that bay leaf. That's good. And then we've got a couple of pieces of stick cinnamon. Again, we can use those again. And then the two black cardamom is one. Get that out. And that's the star anise, I think. Yep, the star anise. Get that out as well. And then just that other black cardamom. The other spices, they'll grind, they'll blend up, and that'll be fine. So just give everything a stir, make sure nothing's sticking. So that's lovely. So now we're going to add in our chilies. We're going to add in our cashew nuts. These were soaking for about 2 hours, as we said. We've drained off most of the water. If you've got a nut allergy, obviously leave them out. You can add, perhaps, you could add mung dal, not mung beans, mung dal, as something that will add a little creaminess to the thing. But this doesn't just add creaminess, it adds a richness and a lovely flavour. So cashew nuts often go in an Indian base, so those are going in. We'll just give that a turn in. And now we can add in our tomatoes. So we can put the lid back on. Keep that on a low light, and we're going to leave that now for about 20 more minutes. And that's going to allow those tomatoes to break down, the onions to break down more, and everything will mulch together really nice. It will give it a little stir occasionally just to make sure nothing's sticking to the pan. When you're using these heavy duty aluminium pans, which are the best really for Asian cooking, you just got to make sure that nothing sticks. So it's been about 20 minutes, so we're going to just check it. By now, hopefully our tomatoes will be soft, and hopefully the garlic too. So just put the lid there. So everything's mulching down really nicely. So if you look at these tomatoes, if I just press one against the pan, you can see they're super soft now. And there's a clove of garlic. Yeah, and that just splits straight through. There you go. See how that splits open, that garlic? Yeah. So it's nice and soft. So just make sure nothing's sticking. So we're going to take the heat off, and you're going to need to let this cool down before you stick it in your blender. If you're going to put it in a blender, if you're going to stick blend it, it's best if you let it cool. But if you're like me, you'd be thinking, I want to do it now. It's like, I've got to wait an hour for it. I've got a little tip for you. In restaurants, to cool things really quick, because they use these ice packs. So these are washed and clean, but I put them just so that they don't get all dirty in a washed clean bag. So we wash this bag, keep it clean. I know that it's good. If I stick this with all them ice packs in the middle of that there like that, and I put the lid back on there and leave it like that, and if I come back in 10 minutes, that will be cold. Honestly, it's a great little tip. So do that. Just get some ice blocks or packs, put them in a bag, stick them in there, it'll cool it down. Once that's cooled sufficiently, it doesn't have to be absolutely cold, just not hot, we'll stick it in the blender, we'll blend it into a paste, and then we'll go to the next phase. So with our ice packs removed, we can now add this mixture into our blender. Now it really will depend on what type of blender you've got, whether you're going to use a stick blender, whether you're going to use something like this. This blender is a high power blender, but we don't want to blend it on too high a power straight away, otherwise we'll end up really with a lot of froth. We don't want that, and that's why one with the tamper is really useful. So I'll just blend this up. The wash up's done, our pan's clean. Now we're going to the final stage. The total really, in terms of time to make this base, is about an hour. That's with allowing it to cool, maybe a little bit longer than an hour, but really it's not bad considering the results you're going to get, believe me. So what we're going to do at this stage is we've got our pan heating on there. We're going to take our powdered spices, so that's our cumin, coriander, chili powder, and turmeric, and 1 teaspoon of garam masala, and we're going to add that into a bowl with a little bit of water, and we're going to make a paste with it. So just add a little bit of water there. This is just a great way of having a little bit more control over your spices so they don't burn in the pan. We're cooking with high temperatures, and it just ensures that you don't get that bitter taste. If you ever burnt spices, you know what I'm talking about. There's nothing worse than burnt spices, and it can ruin your curry. So just create a paste like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put our butter ghee and the rest of our oil, which is the other half of the 400 millilitres of vegetable oil, and we'll just allow that to get to temperature and for that ghee to melt. So we're going to take our powdered masalas, we're going to add them in to our oil and ghee. And just give them a stir. Smell that's coming out of this already, and it's just the final cook stage now, which is about another 20 minutes. So just want to make sure that all our oil, spices and paste, onions, tomatoes, all of that good stuff, the nuts, the garlic, is all mixed. Can you see that? Starting to look really good. So this is really a mixture between a paste like your Balti pastes and your Patak's paste, and an actual base gravy. We're not going to thin this out. We're not going to make this nice and milky or anything like that. We're going to keep this thick. And you're wondering, how do you cook your curry with such a thick base, well, you'll have to tune in next week to see how we do that, but it's amazing. And you don't need a lot of this stuff either. And now there's only one ingredient left to add in. That's right, you guessed it, the sugar. So it's only at this stage that we put in the sugar, and that's just going to add that nice sweet element that's lacking because our tomatoes are just not as good as the tomatoes they've got in India. You see these Indian chefs making it in India, honestly the tomatoes are just so deep red in colour. And I'm going to put the lid back on and we're going to leave that for another 20 minutes. You might be thinking, there's a lot of oil in that base gravy, and there is, but there's some advantages, and you'll see. First of all, it does keep a little bit longer than a typical Bangladeshi style base gravy. This will keep for 10 days in your fridge because the oil acts as a preservative. As long as you keep it in the fridge, once it's cooled, it'll last you for 10 days. You are only going to be, when it comes to making a curry, I'm going to release another video next week, which is my favourite Madras recipe that I've mastered using this base, and I can't wait to share that with you because I'm guaranteeing you this is going to be one of the nicest Madrasas you've ever tasted. But you're only going to need a good chef spoon amount per curry. That's it, and we're going to use water to thin it down. But if you want to have a play in the meantime, by all means do that. But there are going to be some sort of little tips and tricks about this base to help you get the best results. Also, if you want to skim off some of this oil, you can do once it's cooled, and you can use that as a spiced oil in your curries. It's great, but it really does help draw out the flavours of the spices, having this extra oil in the base there. And then when we make the curry next week, you'll see I don't use as much oil, probably about half a chef spoon of oil to temper our spices in, and our garlic and ginger, etc., before we put the base in the pan. So you'll see what I mean next week. So thanks for tuning in. I'm sure you're going to enjoy making this base gravy. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe. That'd be wonderful. Give me a like and a thumbs up. If you've not yet seen our Amazon best-selling curry cookbook that exposes the inside workings of the British Indian restaurant and the takeaway kitchen, then you must check that out. It's in the link below. The ebook is an interactive version with video links and shows you not just what to cook but how to cook it. They really are excellent. And there's the secret to that takeaway curry taste part 1 and part 2. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Until then, happy currying.